and welcome live in the 140th episode of umbraCoffee. And we are joined today by Niels. I wanted to say straight from Umbraco HQ, but you are obviously working remotely.
Not really.
Hi, how are you, Niels?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining. It's going to be an amazing talk because we will be focusing on a lot of improvements for Umbraco and the recent upgrades, and we probably need to start from the product update, which was released this week by Rune. And let me just share my screen if you can see it. It's here. Yeah, it was on August 27th, and there's a lot of new things coming up next in Umbraco ecosystem, starting from Umbraco releases, right? Even the new upgrade for 7.
Yeah, these we spoke about. I mean, 7.15.6 came out this week. 8.6.4 was last week with some nice Azure fixes. But I think what people are most excited about really is the stuff coming over the next couple of weeks and months, which Rina discusses. I'll talk about it because why not? Umbraco Forms 8.5 is mentioned in here, which is funny because it was already released, but it's been pulled twice. So if anyone has installed Umbraco 8.5 in their project, you might want to downgrade because
Umbraco Forms.
Umbraco Forms. Sorry, you can't create forms or save. You can't save forms if you're not a certain level of permission. So I think both releases have been unlisted from NuGet. If you've got it installed, it will still work. It'll still be installed. But yeah, there's been some things that need patching. So I believe, as Runa says, next week we're going to have I guess 8.5.2 with all the working forms stuff, hopefully. So that's exciting.
Yep. And of course, we've mentioned the alpha releases of alpha release of .NET Core version for Umbraco coming somewhere in the next in time. Plus,
you say that this post gave us a little bit of insight, and Niels did on Twitter. Unicorn Niels, not
Unicorn Niels.
Thank you. There's going to be next week a Unicorner episode with Bjarke and Philip, which seems speculative towards some kind of .NET Core thing, which is cool. And the other thing is, if you have a look at the roadmap updates, in fact, the update for all of the libraries are net standard compatible, run on .NET Core. It's not on the roadmap anymore. It's done. So purely from a speculating point of view, like that seems like we are rapidly nearing some kind of workable version on .NET Core. And they've said in this post it should run on like Mac OS and Linux as well, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah. But also some new things in the now section of the roadmap, which is focused about the authentication improvements. Some things being spotted on Umbraco Cloud, which might improve all the general OAuth handling on the CMS itself.
I think this is to support two-factor auth on Cloud. I believe this. This was part of the kind of project they were looking at authentication and seeing how they can do 2FA across the board, which is nice. And it's looking at the pull request, Shannon's discussion and stuff, it's going to be pluggable, I think. So like me as a developer can create a Angular view, like a custom auth flow, and even entirely remove the need for a username and a password and have my own authentication flow in there, which is nice.
Sounds like a kind of merge or movement of Umbraco identity into kind of flow of Umbraco, right?
We're speculating way too much here today.
But what I also wanted to flag is something new in the next, and it relates to some chats which we had before going live here today. It's like about maintaining the versions of Umbraco content. Some chats are happening between Soren, who is right now an owner of an UnVersion package, which was and is still used by a lot of developers and Umbraco installations. So there are some chats on bringing some functionality of that into the core to keep database cleaner and also have some kind of ability of rolling back to the versions which we really want to maintain and not keep too many versions of the documents.
This is interesting. I think that the post says they're looking at bringing like doctype level rules for how versions should be kept and controlled, which is very interesting. Something that I hadn't even considered. Like with UnVersion, I just go wipe out everything.
But there was a question, right? There was a question on Twitter raised by Soren about how people are using it. And that was interesting because also I was not aware that a lot of people is not using the doctype based cleanup, and I was using it a lot because there are some doctypes which are more important than another in many installations, right? Yeah. So we as a call to action, we can just link it up, and I don't know if poll is still open, but if it is,
old now, but yeah, it's certainly an
if it is, just vote. If not, comment, right?
I guess we'll see some kind of RFC or something at some point for this feature, maybe if it's on the roadmap. But it definitely seems like another great community solution that really should just be in core, because a lot of people are using UnVersion.
Yeah. Plus, it doesn't make sense to keep content forever.
Forever.
It's a bit too much, maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly. Plus, some small upgrades on other things coming next. Dashboard for Umbraco Deploy, new features for GraphQL, functionalities for Heartcore, and as if Callum said, some of the things being moved to done, which is a small upgrade, and also information coming and giving space for the new things being worked on. And if we mentioned 8.7, I think we can easily jump to the topic which is close to your heart, Niels, and you've mentioned it's your kind of baby. The word was mentioned here.
I'm trying to do what I can do to improve the UI, right? And I think my Umbraco title is ambassador or editor's ambassador, right? So I'm trying to make life better for editors, basically, right? Because we can have a lot of nice features, but they are not that great if editors can't actually use them. So that's basically my role here at HQ.
And I was saying before we went live, actually, and I think we discussed last week too, that as 8 has evolved, the UX of 8 has just got better and better and better. And I know that you're also engaging with the accessibility team to make sure that the back office is accessible and also user-friendly at the same time, which is fantastic to have someone that's kind of passionate about making that a reality in core, and it's just improving. And as we're going to discuss and hopefully see in a minute with the block editor, I think this really sets the bar for some of the things, the kind of level of experiences we could expect to come, because it's really polished.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we were hearing about this block editor, block list, and things. Tell us what it is exactly for people maybe who didn't see that and didn't play with 8.7 release candidate yet.
Yeah, so maybe I have to jump 2 years back, and we had something called Retreat before Code where there was this topic about what should we do about these complex editors. And I know, Callum, you were part of the team working on this, coming up with the idea for block editors. And it actually resulted into being an RFC where it was open for community to bring in comments on both their needs, but also what they think this could be turned into. And I think the result of it is that we now have something I would call the block editor technology, which is the base for block editors. So I often see that people talk about the block editor, but that's not what it is. It's a technology that we can use to build block editors upon, and that's now in 8.7 brought to life through this new property editor called Blacklist. And
so
as it indicates,
the concept here is that a block is just some data, and you want to present that in some way in the CMS, and whether that's in a list or as a map or as a grid, that's fine. The block doesn't really care where it is, what it is. So the concept of blocks is this underlying technology, and how you create them and edit them is this underlying technology. And as you said, the block list here is the first incarnation of an editor for blocks. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And now we're just talking blocks all the time, but basically what it is, it's the ability to put documents inside documents. So like if you didn't install any packages and we ignore nested content for a bit, then of the default Umbraco, you would have documents with properties, and then that's what documents basically does. But then nested content came along and enabled you to have this sort of inner documents within a property. So now a document can suddenly hold X amount of inner documents that even could hold inner documents as well. And we've seen a lot of community projects trying to do this, and many of them have been really great. But we saw the need to sort of take this this need, or this what we call it,
concept.
This concept into core to make sure that it becomes a native experience.
I think it's really hard, Callum, just to mention, it's really hard to describe something for use cases using the developers' languages, and we often relate to something what we built internally, right, inside of the code, and then describe it how it can be used. So that's why sometimes the demos or the implementations says more than 1,000 names or words, right? That's the case here. So yeah, maybe you can show us how it looks if it's
Let's go into demo mode. So I prepared a demo, and I don't know how long it's going to be. It's maybe going to be super long, but let's see. but basically, I'm going to show you the Blacklist Editor, which is a new property editor in Umbraco 8.7. But I'm also going to come around some of the other UI and UX improvements that we have in 8.7, because there's actually more things in 8.7 that's going to make life greater for editors. So I hope you will enjoy that. But to kind of help the conversation along, I prepared this demo, which is basically a starter kit site that that some of you already know. Let's close this one. And it's loading really fast. And in it, I have added a events section. So you already know there's products and people and so on, but to kind of help the story along its way, I've created events, and I've already created 3 events as well. So nothing fancy about these events. It's just document types, as you know already. We have the documents here. We can go to our front page. We can view the events. And here we have them displayed. It's a headline, an image, and that's actually it. So let's say the client comes ahead and wants to write something about the dates that this event is covering. So let's say the event is maybe 3 days long, and they want to put some details around that. So I want to use the Blacklist Editor for this, and I'm going to create a new property that I call dates. Actually, right now, picking my property editor, you will see an update. So in the new 8.7, you won't see the tabs that we had previously, where you could pick whether you want to create a new data type or reuse a data type. We're sort of taking that decision away a bit, and instead you just see a view of the property editors that are available in your installation. And let me highlight, if you are a pro user, you might want to still be able to search, and that view we haven't changed. So nothing changed there, no more clicks for you. But if you are a new user, it's nice that you come in and get an overview just of the property editors available. And in this example, I want to create a block list. And then I get a view of the data types configured for my property editor. Since this is a new project, there is none, and I'm instead allowed to create a new one. Yes, and here we see the configuration of the block list property editor. The main part is the configuration of the blocks that you are able to create within this property. This is sort of where you define the inner documents that you want to be able to choose from. And let's go ahead and create a event date. Oh yeah, you see here when I click, I'm as you know from nested content, able to pick existing element types, which is sort of the model we use for inner documents. But since I haven't created it yet, I also now have this shortcut that I can use to just go ahead and create it straight away. So hopefully
that. Deep are we right now? We've gone document type, like all the way through to creating a brand new one.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah, exactly. This is quite new actually, and I hope it will improve life of developers a lot. I found myself many times creating a nested content or similar property editor, and then figuring out, oh, I haven't created my element type, and then I have to go all the way back. So I hope this will, help life. What did I want to call it? I wanted to call it event date. And in this one, I want to have a date. And I'm just going to choose this one. And I'm gonna have a headline. Oops, there's nothing called headline. So, and by the way, just ask questions as we go along. I'm trying to.
We've got some questions cropping up in the chat, but we'll ask them towards the end.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's give.
I was just curious how when the decision of reusing or creating a new one is popping out right now. If you want to create a new text, the defined or more tailored property data type here, because that's I think it will improve a lot of installations, because we've seen a lot of projects where people were creating new instances of text fields or text strings for every property, and right now, So if you want to create a new one,
you because you are presented first with the available property editors, and then you get to see your configurations that are available. Then it's a bit more clear, I think, that okay, do I need a new one or do I want to use this one? But of course, if you're a pro user, you are maybe used to just search, and here the available configurations are top, so you're most likely to reuse instead of going down and creating a new one. Sorry for being too fast.
Guides users in the right direction. There was a discussion this week, I think, from Tim about what data types do we always create? What do we change? And I always said, like for the really simple ones, I called them dumb editors with no real configuration, text string, that sort of thing. I don't create new instances. But for the ones with actual settings, it makes sense to create an instance for the use case, because I change it, and I can change the settings, and it only applies to that one use case. And this kind of guides you along that approach, because you go in and you are kind of encouraged to create a new one.
Yeah, and I guess every developer has their own preference of when they want to create new ones or not. Okay, so now I created a new element type, and just to show you, it is an element type already.
And that pre-selected.
Yeah,
so
that's pre-selected.
You didn't have to do that. Oh, amazing.
And I guess this one shouldn't even be shown.
I often forgot about it, to be honest.
That's also annoying that you forget about it. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead, save this one, and it appears here as an available block of my block list. So I know already I'm not completely satisfied with just having this block available. So by clicking it, I can configure this block even further. And now you can see here the options that we have available per block. The one at top here, editor appearance, is about how this block appears when you're going to edit content. We have this group here about data model, which is what content does this block store. And you already see here now that we have the content model that we created just before. And there's a little shortcut here to go edit it or view it if that's what you want. And we also have the ability to add another model for settings, but let's come back to that later. We also have the catalog appearance. The catalog is sort of the create dialog. So when the content editor goes ahead and say add content, then we'll see the catalog of blocks available. And here you can sort of...
That's new. So here we can actually customize how it appears for when a user's choosing that they want to create this block.
Yes, exactly.
Preview. Okay.
Yeah, and actually the list over here to the left side of available blocks uses that same presentation. So you don't need to jump all the way out to your content editor. You can see it in the configuration here. And we can actually try fill out some of this already. Oh yeah, here part of the editor's appearance, you have the label, which is same concept as you know from nested content and these other editors. You are able to either give it a name, just like date or something, but that's not very useful. So instead, I want to show the headline, and if there is no headline, I want it to say unnamed day, and in here you are able to use AngularJS expressions as the one I just pasted.
Very nice.
Sorry. Okay. We'll get around this later, but let's try to put maybe a background color here. I hope we in future versions will improve this with a little color pick or something. But let's at first just add these two colors, and let's see. Okay, now it looks like this. So by adding colors, we can sort of make them stand out a bit from each other. That's maybe the fast way for a developer to make the overview of the available blocks a bit more easy to distinguish. But you can also add a thumbnail. So let's try to do that. Where did I put it? We have here an event date SVG. Oh, okay. So now I've added an SVG. I could also have added a JPEG, or I guess you could even add a GIF if you want to.
So, this image could be almost a screenshot of how it would look on the front end, so the user can see exactly what they're going to be creating. Spot
on question, Callum. It sounds like we prepared this, right? Exactly. so I guess most developers will go ahead, take a screenshot of either how it's going to look in the back office, probably not so useful, but most likely from how it's going to look on the front end, because that will be very recognizable for editors. Because we often end up with names that are quite hard to grasp, like event date. What is that? If you had a catalog of, let's say, 20 different blocks, then what is event date? That depends a lot on the context. So it's gonna hopefully help editors a lot that we can put in some thumbnails. Yeah. So if we look on some of the general settings for the block editor, we are able to set how many blocks you are allowed to put into it. We can put a live editing mode on, and I'm going to return to that later. And we can put inline editing mode on. And basically what that means is that by default, the block editor, when you edit a block, the block properties or the block editor appears as an overlay, like you're known from stack content. But if you want to have it inline, which could be handy for a simple document like this one, where we only have 3 properties, then we might just turn it into inline mode, which is like nested content.
So this achieves what stacked content and nested content achieve, but in one editor.
Yes, and you're able to switch as you go along, which is
and that's really interesting. And so one of the flaws is a strong word, but let's say flaws of nested content is that you can only render one content section. So if I have an element type and it's got 2 groups, content groups or tabs or whatever we want to call them, it would only render the first one, or you'd have to pick which one. What happens with the block editor?
So here we show both as groups beneath each other. Maybe we can go ahead and show that actually in a minute. But let's try to see how this looks. By the way, if you want more or less space than the default property width, then you are able to override the CSS for this. Okay, let's go ahead and see how it looks.
Out of the matrix now.
What, sorry?
We're coming out of the matrix. We were still
yeah, you can say so.
From Inception and Infinite Editor.
Yeah.
Cool.
So here we see I'm just refreshing, sorry. Here we see the Blacklist Editor, and it doesn't look much different from nested content. you have the property actions over here, and you have a add content bar. And let's try to click on that one. And that opens the create dialog or the block catalog. And that might not justify itself now that we only have one block to choose from. We are maybe going to come up with a concept to improve it when you only have one. But it also is here where you can access the clipboard. So that's quite handy.
So you can copy and paste blocks between nodes, between properties.
Exactly, yes. Which is very handy, I would say. So I added my first block, and again, it looks like nested content. I have my properties available right here, and we can try put in the first content. Let's say it's the intro day of my event, and meet and greet lovely people. And here my editor can put some description about the day. Let's add another one. I'm not a copywriter. Let's try to just go ahead and save that, and then try to use this in the front end. So in the front end, you remember we just had the image and the title of the of my event, and now I want to show these dates of the event. And there's two ways for you to render the data of a block list editor, the block editors in general. This is actually, no, sorry, for the block list, because this one is specific to that one. Sorry. You see, I prepared this demo really a lot. And the first one I'm going to show you is this helper method that you have available, which is quite identical to the one you know from the grid. So it sort of helps you to start rendering the block list editor. And basically what it does is it's going to use the alias of the content model you're choosing to pick up a partial view in this folder. So with 8.7, you will get a folder in partial called block list. And in here you can put the partial views that you want to be rendered for a given block.
So there is no a general renderer like it was for the grids, but it's just going through the partial views by default and rendering partials for the blocks, right?
Yes, yeah. There is no predefined blocks. So yeah. Another thing you could do would be to basically just loop through this collection. You will then get a date, which is of the type block list item. Let's look at that in a bit. And that type that you sort of get is not an iPublish content, because the block both contains content and potential settings, but it also contains some information about the layout, which is not so relevant in the case of a list, because we just have the data coming in the list sorted as it is. But if we zoom out a bit and imagine that we once in the future had a block grid type, then you might want to use the data from layout to define, to print out how many columns wide a block is going to be, or some of the other settings that might follow along with that certain structure. So the block editor technology does not enforce a certain structure. You could even have a map, let's say that, and then one of the properties of layout might be the coordinates. You could also imagine a way more advanced structures, like polymorphic structures, where you have sort of like tree structures and relations and so on. There's really no limit to what the layout can be of a block editor. So that's up to you developers to figure out what you want to make of this.
So in terms of the actual data object we're getting, though, is just a list of items, and those items are, as you say, content and settings, and then maybe some additional data.
Yes. Exactly. So here's another way where you basically do the same as this one does. We get the dates, we take the content for that one, we use the alias of the content type, and we pass on the date object, which is of the type block list item. So this also puts it changes a bit how you write your partial views, because you need, if you want to use parts of your content data, you need to access that in model.content. And I guess that's very handy to define that here in the start and cast it, because then you have strongly typed model for your content.
Yeah, but also what you've showed enables the developers to build their own renderers, for example, in the specific front-end frameworks, and maybe even map the properties earlier before being passed to views or partials.
Indeed, because these are I-published elements, they're going to be returned from models builder by the relevant type anyway already. So you can cast them or literally pass like date.content into a partial and use that as the model. You've got a lot of flexibility there.
So now I misspelled something. That's not what I hoped for this demo. Let's just see. Event date. What is going on?
Do you need to rebuild your models?
Yeah. I'm getting a little bit desperate. Let's hope this is, that's slow.
I joked this morning that we'd made the relevant sacrifices to the demo gods.
Yeah. But I have to maybe excuse that I'm running the Umbraco server in VM. Okay, now it's working. And now we have those two event dates that I put in, and I can edit those here. So that's quite nice. Yeah. Okay. So any questions so far? Let's
so that we do have a couple of questions. The first one is let's go to this one from Soren because I think it's very valid. What happens to nested content now? Because this is nested content.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
That's a fair answer as well. But what I've seen,
so it's still there. Yes, it's still there.
And it still works.
Yeah.
I guess at some point will be deprecated in favor of this editor.
But in one of the updates, there was information about the Uno starter kit being adjusted to the Blacklist Editor, and the nested elements were going to be replaced by this one. So sooner than later, probably the element types will just replace it. But right now, probably it will live simultaneously at the same time.
We don't want to prevent people from upgrading just because they want to keep using nested content. And actually, we haven't let nested content all the way behind, because it's also been improved in this release, and we are going to get back to that later when we're going to talk about validation.
But here was also a question from Patrick about the same thing, right? So is it possible to reuse the same elements of old nested content into the new block at List Editor?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay.
And I could imagine someone could write a great migration script that changes this automatically without any.
I believe someone maybe from the ProWorks team at some point has a script. So there's going to be some clever person in the community is going to come up with a solution on this.
So maybe I actually have to mention that the Blacklist Editor and the block editors in general is actually a great example of HQ working together with the partners and the community. So we have community helping out with the RFC and figuring out how is this going to work, what is it going to do. But then we also actually had ProWorks helping us developing it. And that's just really nice that we have someone out in the town that needs this, and then they are able to come help us.
Very good. And so you mentioned validation, but we have a final question from Aaron, which I think ties quite nicely in with the validation question. So in nested content currently, the image cropper doesn't work because it's like nested properties and it all gets messy. Yeah. Similarly, we don't have validation, real validation in nested content. What about
yes, and we fixed that now. But let's get to that later in the demo. So here's a cliffhanger. Okay, so let's continue with the demo a bit. Let's imagine that the client comes ahead and says, I'm not satisfied with this description field. I want to be able to write something about the sessions happening during the day. So let's try to go in to our block here, and then add some sessions. So a blacklist editor inside the blacklist editor. I'm gonna call it sessions. I'm gonna create a new blacklist editor. And in here, I have cheated a little bit. I created it already. I'm gonna make it inline editing mode. And I'm gonna put a label for my session. I want to show the time and the headline, and just so you see what I've cheated with already, it's basically this element type, an element type with time, headline, and speakers, which is a multi-node tree picker. Okay, I'm going to display the time and the headline, yeah, that's it. Let's submit that. Okay,
it's very impressive how quickly. I mean, yes, we're like hundreds of levels deep, but it's very impressive how quickly you can skip through the infinite editors to actually create those nested block editors too.
Yes, and that's one way for some developers, and some developers like to go to settings. But what is nice about it is I don't need to know the exact name of the element types that I'm using. I can naturally dive into the same flow as content editors will do. Like I can go in here and open dates, and then I can
the get into there about it being natural is so true. When you're looking for something, you're going, oh, what's it called again? Where is it? And you'll leave this context and you'll go and find it, and then maybe forget what you were doing. Why you need it?
Put it in some stupid folder or something, right? And you can't find it or something, right? So
still, it remembers me the times when we had the 3 tabs open to edit document type and template at the same time. Yeah. So right now it's a lot of improvement here.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have the intro day, and I'm able to add some sessions. So let's go ahead and add one at 9 o'clock. Let's say yoga with Lee and Jan. And I'm gonna pick, that's what you want, right? This is what makes you come to Coca.
Every conference starts with that.
Yeah. And maybe we're gonna have another session, 11, I don't know, keynote. So let's go ahead and save that. So this is not such a great editing experience anymore. It sort of became all way too nested, and my screen real estate is becoming a bit tight, right? So as a developer, I want to go ahead and change this, and this is where we will go into our block list editor for the dates and go ahead and remove the inline mode. So now, instead of editing these inner documents inline of the main document, we will be opening them up as a overlay. So, okay, so if we look at the overview here, it looks just like what we had before, but we'll see here that the little arrow we had before is not there. And when I click it, it will open up as an overlay. And I have now a better overview of what that specific inner document contains.
Very good.
Nice.
Yeah. So let's try to add this in a template tool. I don't know how time is flying, but I hope
it's good. This is all incredibly valuable stuff. So I think as long as people keep watching, we'll keep talking.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Soren asked about the documentation for that, so I think it's also worth to keep it in a loop that we want to see how it works and how to use it, and not everyone had the chance to play with that already, so that's awesome.
We also have parts of the documentation missing; it's still in progress. So so I think it's good to show this. So before we had this partial view for the event showing the date, the headline, and the description, and now we want to show each session. And of course, I cheated before this demo and wrote this code, but let's just go through it. So my sessions property is this new Blacklist Editor that I just created. And for each session, I'm gonna take the content part and assign it to this variable. I'm casting it to my content model, the element type. So I have strongly typed object here. And then I'm gonna output the time and the headline. And if there's any speakers, I'm gonna run through those and get their photo and just put their name as the alt text. So let's save that.
So this really is no different to what you were doing before for rendering that list, even though presentationally in the back office, it's actually a different user experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the great thing about switching around these things is that the data structure is the same, even though the editing experience is different. Yes. And this also is another way of rendering stuff. The two previous examples we saw were using partial views for each block. This is just some inline code. Because I know my sessions is always going to be event sessions, I don't have to make that abstraction. I'm just going to render straight away this stuff. Okay, let's have a look in the front end now that we added this. I think I only added one session, but let's see. So now we have Yoga with Lee and Jan, and we have their nice, lovely faces here.
Cool,
yeah,
that looks amazing.
Great. I'm just looking at my okay. Cool. So this hopefully improved the day for editors a bit. That you sort of have an overview of your dates here. Let's imagine you had 10. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say actually this ability to add items between items.
Oh yes, we forgot to talk about that.
Content you'd add it at the bottom and then you'd have to reorder it up to the top. Whereas here you just add it.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm able to put in content at any spot, and it opens the same dialog. And of course, I'm also able to drag around stuff. So good point, Callum. Thank you for highlighting that. But even though this gives a nice overview for the editors to sort of see all days, let's imagine the client of this website has very long events, like 10 days and so on. Then that's quite nice that you don't have to sort of expand inline here, but you can go in and edit each individual day. And as well, what about the sessions, right? You can get an overview of the sessions and then you can edit each individual session. But still, the name here might not give that much value, because what if you had an event that existed of 8 conference days? Which day is what? And how do you differentiate that? So I want to improve what we display at this point. So let's go ahead here in the events, edit our data type here. And then what I want to do is I want to pick a different view for how we render this block in the back office. So I can, as we talked about previously, I can pick a view. Or did we talk about this? I don't know. I'll just talk about it again. You can pick a view to replace how this block is being rendered in the back office.
Okay.
And you can also pick a style sheet for how it's going to be rendered in the back office. And if you add a style sheet, the block will turn into a style scope web component, meaning that none of the styles from the back office will go into your blocks, but also the other way, the style sheet of your block will not interfere with the back office.
So you can load the entire style sheet for your website and only render one little block of markup, and it's not going to affect.
Yes, exactly.
Ooh. Our front-end developers will become happy. They can use components, view components, and style sheets for components per block, which sounds amazing here.
Yes. So currently it's just a file picker, but it would be nice to improve with some stuff in the future that maybe automatically picks up files and so on. But for now, you pick a file, and I'm going to pick a style sheet as well. Where did I have it here? Okay. Yes, let's go ahead, submit that. And let's see. So with this new view, I now have chosen to display the the sessions of the day here in the overview, which is quite handy. Okay, something is broken. Great, but let's look at this custom view for a bit. So here we have it. And the custom view can be anything you like it to be. It does not necessarily need to be just a view of your blog. It can be anything. You could make your own editor if you like to. So if you know AngularJS, you can put in input fields and make a whole editor yourself, if you like to. But in
do
this,
like inline editing and everything, if you really wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to change this. It's okay. So what I've done now is I've just made a view where I want, no matter where you click on the view, to open the editor. So I wrapped it all into a button, which on click calls block.edit. But for some reason, my version of Umbraco is not completely up to date, so I'm just going to paste in this code instead. But other than that, I just display the headline. I have an object available here called block, and I can access the raw data that we store in the database, which is fine for my headline. Then I'm doing some magic here to loop through the inner Blacklist Editor, the one containing the sessions, and displaying the time and the headline for each of those sessions. And let's go ahead and see that. I'm just going to refresh because
so many small things hidden behind the scenes of that a lot of people were saying that, oh, just another yet another list editor, and it's totally not that. It's not just an editor here, right?
Seems like, well, at least a lot of the potential use cases for this type of experience here have been thought through, and how this could maybe not out of the box, but definitely support building those kind of really flexible editor experiences.
So now I, of course, have the issue that I hope not to have in a live demo. This was working earlier, but I really don't know if I have to bump this one for this to work. So basically, the problem is that the this method that I was calling block.edit does not exist in this version. So now I need it to uncache whatever I had before.
But the scoped CSS and the ability of controlling the view of those blocks here is probably opening an options for all the editors, all the creators or developers here to render whatever they want to render here. And I remember some of the Grid implementations where people were rendering the exact preview of the content which is going to be rendered on the front end. And here it's possible.
But that's probably a good question, because this is a static HTML view. You're doing this in JavaScript to create that render. Am I right in saying that out of the box, currently, there's no way of rendering, say, a razor view inline?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. But it's probably if there's a use case for this, then there's scope for PRs, or maybe we're going to see Soren coming out with block type custom view preview editor.
Exactly. It would. I can't imagine completely how it's going to work, but it would be nice to be able to use razor views as well. But I can say it's not all client projects that can use or will use razor views. If you imagine a Heartcore project, for example, you will not have a razor view render engine, or you will not have templates for it. Right?
The support for options there is good, and I guess you could quite easily create a custom Angular view that does some magic on the back end to render the CS/HTML preview on the back end too. So there's there, which is, I think, the important thing. It's flexible, it's clean, people can do what they need to do.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna try just here behind the scenes to restart the server to see if I can make that make my demo work from that. But in the meantime,
explanation here of the scope CSS just whilst we're waiting for that. Like if you're gonna do an H1 and have a style for H1, Umbraco's not gonna know or worry about that. And no more
here's a great example of that. Sorry, talking on top of you, but yeah, this is the style sheet used for this demo. Or is it? Here it was. Sorry. So this is just being styled by this style, and it's styling directly on button. Like, because within here we only have one button.
The whole thing.
And it's not. It's showing
not for every other button then.
Exactly. It's only that button, right? Okay, I'm quite desperate. I'm out of ideas on how to make this work, but let's just try last time. Okay, it does not work. Damn it.
Okay. We can move on. It's still a preview release. This is not a polished feature yet, but it's fantastic to see this working. I
think we can move on just with me removing this custom view, and then I can show you what I actually want to show next, which is okay. Oh, wait. No, but when we if we imagine now that we see the sessions displayed here in the content editor, then we might want not just these sessions to appear when the editor clicks submit. We might want whatever we do over here to update directly over here. Like when I'm entering, for example, something here, we might want that reflected back to sort of see your edits live. Where traditionally whatever you have in a dialog is first going to be submitted back to your data model when you submit. But that we can change in the Blacklist Editor by enabling live editing mode. So basically that's going to make whatever changes we do go directly to the document model straight away.
Very
just
cool.
Just one toggle.
Yeah.
I thought about Angular directives and some code snippets to make this magic happen, and it's just one toggle here.
Yeah. So now I cannot edit the sessions for it to see, but if you imagine the sessions were displayed over here, that would be nice, right? But instead now we can see that when I'm writing the label, it updates over here.
And this would work
for every type of preview.
Deep. If you had like three nested block lists with custom views, it would update the whole way up the tree.
Yes, if you just enable live editing on all of them, yes.
Wow.
That's right.
Nice.
Okay, so next thing to show. Well, maybe we can just touch upon the idea of custom views a bit, because in this scenario, it might, since we only have a very few fields here to sort of maintain a good overview while you edit your sessions of the day, you can imagine that I quite easily could replace this view with a input for time, a input for the headline, and some sort of picker where I could pick the speakers. So it's not expandable or anything. I just edit straight in line. That's one concept you can use the custom views for as well, to just make even smaller blocks.
Yeah. It's very clever. And actually, before you would have had to create a custom property editor to go and do that. And you wouldn't then have the benefits of using the value converter backed behind the block list, for example, to get strongly typed results back. And using,
you would have to change your templates and so on, or your eraser views. And here it's still the same. You're just changing how it works in the editor. So let's try shortly to go use the settings on our dates here. So imagine that we want some dates to stand out a bit. So I imagine that I might want to add the ability to set a background color for my dates, and I want to hide that away into the settings section of my blog. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new element type for the settings, and in that one I'm just going to have one called background color.
I think you need to give it a different name.
Oh,
the element type, because your other element types.
Wow! Yes.
Yeah.
Quite clever. Yes, we need to change that. I'm just going to use this text string for it to keep it a bit simple, and then I'm going to call it event date settings. Thank you, Kyle. Okay, save and close. Uh-oh, we have an issue. Let's ignore that for a bit. And let's go ahead here. Okay, I don't know what I'm editing right now. Okay, so let's say the intro day, I want that to stand out. So now I added a settings section for my blog, and that appears as a cogwheel here on the overview. And if I click into it, I also have the ability to switch between those two as sort of content apps. And in here, I can now put a color, any color you are into, maybe something like coffee. Isn't that's something for you, right? So let's save and publish that, and let's try to use that in our front end. So now it's not going to be displayed, but when we look here at our events rendering, we might want to put it out here, and then it's So for us to be able to access this, we could either do this, I would say,
dynamic, yep.
But to do it the way I would like to do it, at least, would be maybe to assign the settings in a strongly typed manner. Oh, yeah. Did we name it settings? And then date settings. Let's just copy this guy.
So this is then casting that I publish element to a models builder model, and then you can again interact with it in a lovely, clean, strongly typed way.
Yes. Let's hope this works. Live demo for the win.
Yeah.
And strongly typed everything. That's the mission.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and again, I'm running the Windows server in a VM, and that one turns always out to be slow when I'm running.
Wow. So it worked. So settings is just another element type. You can put anything you want in there. Pickers, content pickers if you really wanted. Another block list if you really, really wanted. Just element type.
And such a different editor experience than previously dealing with JSON settings sometimes, right? And things like that, which were...
Is it grid? You've got to define it's like the editor is a
JSON
where you paste JSON objects in. And know the syntax. It's terrible.
Yeah. Such an improvement.
So actually, I have just two things more to show you. Let's imagine that the editor is a bit creative and writes 1 o'clock maybe here as the time. Whatever. So this session is good, and what I've done is I've added a regex expression that this value needs to follow. And if you are a pro Umbraco user, you know that is first being validated on the server. So we will not know this at this stage. So I'll go ahead and confirm that. And then I will go ahead and save and publish my site. And then previously we didn't have...
That's so nice. That's so good.
So with complex validation, we also improved the UI for validation in general, because it does not just help to have complex validation if you don't know where the validation issues are. So one improvement I'm quite happy of with this release is that we've added these small validation message badges.
Badge, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of leads the editor to where their issues are located. And even if
as well to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. To sort of take your attention, because if you had a very long list, it might brown a bit. Like it's not the red color is not that different, right? So we need somehow to grasp your attention without screaming in your face. And even if you are on the different content app, you will be led towards the content app. So it's sort of leading you there, and once you're there, it's not jumping, it's not trying to take your attention. So let's try to go into the intro day, and again here we'll see if we went to settings, we'll see the issues on content, and in here we are being notified that it's the 1 o'clock session that has an issue, and if we go in, it will say here you need to enter a timestamp.
So this is just following the standard validation on doc types, on element types, and yes. So this behavior is now available to, well, potentially to all editors in the CMS. This is not a block editor thing.
No. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think if you're doing your own property editor, you might need
you might have to do something. But these mechanisms are core, and their APIs available for you to use. They are not in the block editor specifically.
Yes, no. And the complex validation is also implemented for nested content. So so if you are using nested content today, you should hopefully see improvements installing 8.7.
This is genuinely so beautiful. I think I might cry. This is validation.
Yeah, but exactly that was a long-awaited improvement here, and someone said as a game changer for the great editor, which is obviously the block list and block editor. But that's small improvements like that is exactly changing the way how content editors will deal with content, because this is their life, this is their issues and mistakes they are making on a daily basis, and small improvements like that will improve their lives a lot.
Yeah,
and I'm sure
I think maybe to wrap this up, we've had a few comments in the chat about along that vein of really making a world-class editor experience. And Mark asks, again, we're not going to hold you to this, Niels, you can say you don't know, but this content settings alongside content does seem to make a lot of sense. Could we see settings coming to document types as well in future, and having that other content app for settings?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, I actually don't know. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I think we've seen that there's a need for this ability to hide some properties or put them on the side. I don't think we have permissions in this, but I could as well imagine that only some editors had access to settings. So I think we'll in the future we'll touch more upon this.
This is just the introduction of this concept, I guess. So it's setting the path to the future. And the other question we had, which is casting back a little bit, when we were talking about this new in 8.7 data types being contextual, so you can create them when creating a property on a content type. Lee says, could this be the end of the data type tree, because actually that flow makes sense, which is an interesting idea. I like maybe, or maybe you just don't use it as much.
I guess it just provides an alternative way to access things. I think it's still good to have the data type tree to get an overview of what you have.
I mean, I've for a long time had this belief that some of the I called them dumb editors earlier, the core editors like text string, the default configuration shouldn't even be in that data type tree. The data type tree should be empty when you launch Umbraco, and you then create your custom ones. But you
would be lovely to clean it out. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, you could maybe still be able to pick the core ones that are shipped with core, but they're not. They don't appear in configuration, for example. But this is baby steps, isn't it?
I think I have to mention that the reason why we don't just go ahead and clean it up is because there's projects that are depending on what's there already. So we can't just go ahead and remove it, because if someone has their own starter kit and that uses one of the built-in ones, then it would be breaking if we go ahead and remove it.
Yep.
So
very true.
We have to be careful.
Indeed. Wow. Okay. I am lost for words. This is amazing. As Franz said on the chat, this literally seems like a game changer. It's exactly what Umbraco needed, and as an editor experience, incredibly polished. little jump on that what do we call it? The balloon next to an error.
Validation issue marker, whatever.
Makes me so happy. That is truly wonderful.
Yeah, there were some ideas of improving the implementations, but that's as you've said, Callum, it's just the beginning, right? And I think all of those comments and ideas can just fly in as a RC feedback, and we can just encourage everyone again to play with RC. It's there, it's possible to be used and played, so everyone can experience by themselves. And plus, add the comments and feedback if something is not working. To make it cleaned and polished before the final launch. And then again, comments after all, and all the implementations, all the demos and everything what can be done with that. Even Warren probably said in the comments that HQ is curious about the implementations and how it can be used. And I'm sure that the clever community will give it a go and play and probably make something what we couldn't even imagine is possible with that. So let's do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
I'll look forward to see that, because it is basically just a new way for you to structure data, at least a native new way. And then with the custom views, that's basically just a way for you to override whatever is displayed, but also how you want to interact with it and so on. So, and then we haven't even touched upon that the block editor technology is there. We haven't written the documentation yet, but you are able to go out, build your own package on top of this if you wanted to go ahead and make a map editor or whatever.
Because that data structure is the same between each block, it's interoperable. So this is one of the big things that we discussed at the retreat you mentioned, was you create content in the grid, it's wedded to your layout and your design, and that's what you do. You're now using the grid. If you then wanted to change it to be stacked content or stacked content to the grid, it's just not possible. Whereas a grid based on the block editor, a list based on the block editor, a map based on the block editor, you can just switch the format, and it's just presentation layer stuff. It's not changing your underlying data. It's going to work in exactly the same way. And your code on the front end doesn't need to change too, as we've seen today. It's just the same collection that gets given to you every single time.
Well, it could depending on your structure. But if you have a grid, it's probably still a list of data. And if you have the block list editor, it's still a list. So yeah, for those, it would be the same. It would be possible for you to do other data structures, and then of course you need to adapt a little bit. But it will be very easy for you.
I think there's also exciting concepts. This is really the first time we are unlocking the potential of elements, and elements maybe becoming a more prominent first-class citizen in the CMS. It would be amazing to see elements actually treated like documents, where you could publish and unpublish them. You could set scheduling on them. You could have variant elements. Like imagine that, like one cell in a bigger grid that is variant, but everything else is not. You could go totally crazy with that. And I guess this is just the start, as we've been saying. There's a lot of potential there. Yeah,
it's gonna be super interesting to see how we can improve this going forward. Indeed. And also shared blocks. If we start putting these element types in the data list, then you might have the ability of have collections and so on.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So thanks for the demo, Niels. And I think everyone was curious how it looks, how it works, and what's possible with that. It's not all yet, and we are waiting for any kind of other demos and playgrounds and also documentation after being completed. And yeah, we can just encourage everyone again to play around and share the feedback. And we know that all the community members are already playing around with RC. And we can use it as a transfer to some other news as well from the release perspective. Callum, you've been collecting all of them as well.
There was a lot of release this week, and we'll jump through them incredibly quickly. So we've mentioned version 7. There was an update to V7. We had 7.15.6, but also Usync 8.7, a release candidate for that, working on Umbraco 8.7, which is really good. Kevin is always hot off the mark with that, so give that a go. He wants some feedback as well, and it supports the block editor for Usync, is really cool.
Pretty fast. And Callum, you've been doing some releases as well.
Oh yeah, so I've released 2 things this week which help make search strongly typed in Umbraco a bit. So there's some helpers in there for querying content, like if it has a template or not, paging as a strongly typed object, and then also the same for facets. So I released my facets extension for Examine previously, and now you can say you want a facet that contains, say, an ID of a content node, and you want that as I publish content, and it will give you the content item.
Nice.
So these are just 2 little extensions for searching, making things a bit cleaner and simpler as well.
Yeah. Plus, other releases this week was one of them was log exporter from Peter Gregory, which is giving the ability to export logs from serial log entries in Umbraco back office. Something which is really handy for someone who is going to investigate logs, or maybe want to transfer them between instances or Umbraco installations. Simple element package from Dennis.
We've spoken about this. This is a way of creating elements within content. So you might want to have it's got tabs and stuff on it. It's quite nice. This is from Dennis Oman. Really cool.
Yeah, really, really cool package. Auto rotate from Jason.
Auto rotate,
which is bringing the functionality of image rotation straight into Umbraco back office and media section, which was something what people, a lot of editors asked for. And I remember some of the discussions about other processing images functionalities here in the back office. So rotation is already there with this package. Smaller images, again, one more thing for images from Pulse Heal. It's bringing the ability of shrinking the image sizes probably straight after uploading them.
Yeah, you can do it retrospectively over your images too as an app setting.
To specific sizes. That's really, really handy for big and heavy media sites. Multiple date picker was updated to Umbraco V8.
His first ever package as well. He's worked with the previous developer of this package to update for V8, release it. Looks really good. Well done, Owen.
Exactly. Video embed by Ucrypt. That's for another extension for embedding the videos straight from the URLs.
From YouTube,
also handy for
supports all of them.
And Fastly Umbraco dashboard. That was something what also was new this week, and it provides the Fastly dashboard straight in the Umbraco back office. And I've never used Fastly, so I don't know if is it something like Cloudflare, if I'm correct.
It's Varnish Cache as a service.
Varnish Cache.
It's CDN based on Varnish Cache and lets you control like the Varnish Cache rules and everything. But it's great to see this integrated because I've used Fastly quite a bit.
Okay, that's really nice. And that's from the releases perspective. There were some new blogs from Umbraco side. Sophie written a diary from the docs team, and it's highlighting all the actions and all the things happening in the docs team. Again, a lot of
their internship because of COVID has thrown things off a bit. Some stories from the current interns, Busra and Sophie, as well as some of the work they've been doing around the new features in Core, and also they're investing a bit more time in Umbraco TV and producing some more video material.
Videos and Umbraco 8, which is also something what is going to be highlighted more and more in the docs. And package team also gave us an update in August, and Jesper wrote a nice summary of everything what's happening in the package team. And again, when we are speaking about package teams in Umbraco, always a shout out to people who are not in the teams to contribute and also improve the team's life, because we can see the upgrades, but also everyone can contribute and share their experience with the team being focused on this particular element. And
in this case, Matt and someone else, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, contributed to Unpack, and that's
exactly
kind of summarizing some of those things that have been done, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Twitter conversations as well around every new release from the team, so that's great, and it needs to come back to the teams. And the final list of things
is hey Umbraco fans, sorry.
Yeah, hey Umbraco fans sentence from Lee, and once again focus on videos and demos and all the things like that is very important. A lot easier to understand specific use cases if you can see them created. So here Lee spent a lot of great time describing how Contentment can be used in Umbraco V8. So go and check it out if you want to use Contentment, or maybe decide if you want to use Contentment for your project, see what's possible with that. And final blog post, which was shared a couple days back, straight from Rachel.
It was shared this morning.
This morning, but written on 25th August. So. We've seen this today, and great story from Rachel, who's one of the Umbraco MVPs, about the motivation and programming career and everything. What was related to Umbraco journey, and how being active in the community helped Rachel get back to on track with the motivation and everything else related to writing code and contributing back, and an amazing and impressive list of participations and activities from Rachel. Last but not least, call to action to another discussion raised by Steve. A lot of comments flying around already about the voting for issues and all the communication, let's say, between issues being raised by community or created for the Umbraco itself, and maybe priorities or the need.
It's a really interesting thing for open source projects as a whole, because there's always a gatekeeper. They have to be in charge of where people's resources get sent. Otherwise, we couldn't have had something as awesome as, say, the block editor, because it probably wouldn't have happened. But how do you handle those priorities, communicate them properly? How do people voice their support for certain things? It's a really interesting topic, and I don't think it has a good solution. I don't think there is a nice way to do this yet. But joining with
it's always a balance, right? And it's really, there's so many things we would like to pick up on, but we just don't have those amount of resources.
Exactly.
So it would be nice to find a way where we can maybe open source prioritizations or great ideas.
But also there were some insights of GitHub discussions and some of the areas on GitHub which are helpful in terms of discussions and validation of some issues. So share your experience, people. If anyone has their thoughts about it, it's always worth to share them, and maybe it will result in some kind of improvements if they will be reasonable from both sides. And that's it from our list of things this week. A long episode with a long demo, but again,
sorry.
right now, but no, it was very valuable, and we can just right now. I just wanted to say that we can just point everyone curious about possibilities with Blacklist and block editor to this video to see what's possible. I didn't even know that all of that is possible, so that's a great lesson for all of us. And we will definitely use it and await for the final version, which will have some tweaks raised by the testing people in the RC period right now, which was extended.
And future versions as well. It's not like development will stop when we release. There will come future versions with improvements, of course.
Yeah.
So also raise your voice, community. If you have ideas, let us know.
And Hacktoberfest is coming up, so there's get those creative juices flowing, and maybe contribute to the block editor or something new in 8.7.
Yeah,
great.
Cool. So again, thanks, Niels, for your time and for joining us today and sharing your journey with your baby in the block editor. And thanks everyone for contributing and asking questions. And as usual, we'll share the links and everything else with the video with you, and await for the more feedback. So yeah, thanks again. Have a great rest of the day and the weekend ahead, and we will see each other on the next Friday.
Indeed,
as usual.